Okay, good.
Yep.
Hello, welcome. I am Laura Cox from Acupuncture and Wellness of Wisconsin, and I am here today with Jack Butler
Hello.
from Colorado. Hello, Jack. Today we are shooting an interview just a little bit to introduce Jack and talk about the upcoming workshop that he has in December. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about presence. That's something that you specialize in. So can you tell us a little bit about, we've talked before, but can you tell us about being present and how you work with that and how you came to work with that as a modality? Threw a lot at you all at once.
Yeah. Well, I guess probably maybe 7 years ago, I used to run a training business in London. I built and ran a business that runs transformational programs for youth leadership programs, and had always run very busy. And I sort of assumed that that's like what a successful life looked like. Like the more busy you were, the more successful you were in a certain way, like the more you had going on. And people say, hey, how's it going? You say, good, busy. How are you? Busy. Good, we're all busy, right? So
Guilty.
then, and there's a partial truth in that, right? That the more you are maximizing and optimizing your time, sometimes the more you're getting certain outcomes in terms of productivity. But what you might also notice is that the quality of your life is constant busyness. And so I started to meet people who were into this much more kind of meditative orientation to life, who would do these, what they called stops, where they would just pause for a couple of minutes and kind of just gather their energy, calm their nervous system, empty their minds. And initially I was kind of resistant to that. It seemed like a sort of, particularly like when you're most busy, if someone says, you know what you should do is stop, you're like, no, like, do you not know how much I've got to get done? And after a while of just really looking at that and being with it, the Dalai Lama says that on your most busy days, that's when you need to pray most. And part of that is so that you are most tuned in to what is most important. And so what you might notice is that when you are busy and in that kind of busy mind, that you don't always attend to what is highest priority. It's like your mind is kind of scattered and you're anxious. So you're kind of jumping from things to things. I actually, on the weekend, I put this together, which is, it's kind of like a big brain dump of a lot of the things that I have in my life at the moment, because I kind of noticed that I was kind of tired but anxious, and I was like, wow, I'm overcommitted right now. So I just wanted to get it all down on paper so I could look at it, renegotiate some agreements with myself, but not sort of just commit to being in an ongoing busy frenzy,
Right.
So presence is a practice. It's not like, yes, there's maybe a few people who get to this sort of like this state of sort of always being present. But I think for most of us who want to live 21st century lives where we're engaged and have businesses and relationships and do the sort of the business of life that most people do, presence is something you drift from and you come back into. And the reason to do that is to be less anxious, is to be more potent in what you put your attention on, is to have more intimacy in your relationships. Because if you're actually present with someone, there's a kind of intimacy that you can find in the moment that you can't find anywhere else. Whereas if I'm hanging out with a friend or partner or lover and like half of my attention is on like something else, my email, my business, some other anxiety, then people don't get to be with me. And as business owners, that's really a common problem, is that staff, vendors, team members don't actually get to be with you because you're somewhere else.
Right.
At least partially.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I think that plays into conversations as well. We're always thinking of the next thing to say before you're even finished speaking or something along those lines.
Yes, we call that reloading.
So, but that's actually it. As an acupuncturist, I kind of have to think 2 steps ahead, especially for an initial.
Well, as a chess player, I have to think six steps ahead.
I was being generous. I'm being humble. But when somebody's coming in for the first time, I have a very limited amount of time to sit down with them, get their whole life's history, and come up with a treatment plan without making them sit and wait for a very long time. So how can you apply presence in that kind of a situation where you need to be on point and you need to be prepared to be fast acting? How does presence not slow you down in those kinds of situations? Is that a clear question?
Yeah. So I want to say that presence doesn't necessarily predetermine a pacing.
Okay.
There's a sense in which for most of us we get more present by slowing down. I think that's true. Because obviously when we slow down, there's a way that we tend to relax our nervous systems, we tend to breathe more deeply, and we tend to kind of notice more, we take more of our internal and external environment in. Obviously anyone that's in a healing profession, including acupuncture, a lot of what's important in a healing profession is relational. It's not just the technique, it's not just knowing the spots to put the needles in, it's actually like relational presence. So one thing that I think presence can really help with in the healing profession is the quality of care and connection and tracking and attunement that you have with a client. So if you really want to get someone's world, like I could get your world by you telling me like, oh, I grew up in this military base and I did this and I did that. But I can also really get your world by being super present to the micro adjustments in your environment, noticing the places where you maybe skip over something, noticing what you do say and what you don't say, feeling into my somatic experience as I'm with you, right? If I notice like, oh, I've started to get a little anxious, is that my anxiety or is that your anxiety? And as healers, we're often pretty good at, we're energetically open. So there's a way that we're pretty good at picking up system feedback, information in the environment, in the field. And I might miss that if I'm here just going through a list of questions in a perfunctory manner.
Absolutely.
So there's the information I receive. There's also just the experience of being with you, right? If I'm a client, we've all had it when you go into the doctor and they're like, yep, this, that, this, that, this, that. And you're like, dude, I just wanted to hang out. Come on, meet me. Or the chiropractor osteopath who sort of comes in and just starts like throwing you around and doing stuff, but they're not fully there. They're what we call out to lunch, technical term. Just means they're not fully present. So also being present, you might notice in a very realistic way, wow, I have a super busy day today. So I'm actually only going to take 10 minutes to do this intake. And that's now a conscious decision. You know what I mean? There's like a way that I'm in, what we call captain and commander, as opposed to crazy maker, where I'm kind of super busy and all these ideas are flowing, but I'm a bit scattered, or where I'm in kind of victim and I'm not really acknowledging the time constraints that I'm in. So I'm sort of subject to my day rather than to some extent kind of running my day. Yeah.
I love what you said about presence as a practice. It's a really great reminder that it's not an all or nothing. I think so many of us feel like, oh, I didn't get it now, so I can never get it ever again, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And it's a really important reminder to have. And also I think it's good to hear that, so many people think I'm present, I'm physically present, I'm here, so like I'm present. But there's that differentiation between the physical presence, the mental, the spiritual, the emotional presence. And it's important, I think, to be able to differentiate that in ourselves as well. Because being physically present is important as well. And being present to our physicality is also important.
Yes.
But how can we take these techniques that you teach and the other coaching that you offer as well and directly impact our business and our lives? Like, what is the big picture offering that you have?
Well, one aspect of it is lifestyle, or quality of life, maybe said better. So there's a relationship, I believe, and I'd invite anyone just to be a practical psychologist and kind of experiment for themselves, between presence, like really being in each moment, and the actual quality of your life experience. So there's a way that let's put in another example. Like, if I'm not a parent, but if you are a parent and you are spending time with your child, but you know that most of your attention is somewhere else, right? There's a way that there's a kind of richness and quality of experience of that moment that might be compromised.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, most of us are doing that most of the time, or at least a significant amount of the time in our lives, where we're half in one thing, we're half in another. We are, I'll have this sometimes, I've got pretty good ears if I want to, and I can listen when I'm on a coaching call with someone, and I'll be like, oh, they're doing some something in the background, right? They're making coffee, they're putting the dish rack away. And it's like, if you really want to make a shift in your life, but you can't get present to yourself, you can't get really like blink it off and just be fully in what's here and now, what you basically do is you reduce the impact of the truth. Because when something in a coaching moment lands as like, boom, that's actually a truth, that's a new revelation about who I am or how I see the world or how my past is being projected into my present. But if I'm half doing the dishes, there's a way that it doesn't get the kind of impact in my life. So everything becomes slightly duller, like the bandwidth of your life is kind of reduced. Whereas if you're really present, people have these moments where they look at the beauty of a rose and they kind of start to tear up. Part of that is actually being really present to the beauty that exists in the world. Whereas most of the time we just kind of ignore that.
Right. God knows we all need to focus on the beauty in the world right
now. Yes, I could agree with that.
Yes,
so there's definitely quality of life gains. I think there are also productivity gains because one of the first tasks of productivity. It's like soccer. I used to play soccer, right, to a reasonably decent level, varsity level. And really, when you break it down, if you get the ball in I'm going to call it football just because otherwise I get such a hard time from my countrymen. When you get the ball in football, there's really only three things really, but two that you can do. One is that you can pass the ball, and the other is that you can move with the ball. I mean, the third option is you can kind of stop.
What's the point of stopping? Continue, please.
Well, just, sometimes if you stop, actually the play opens up around you and you might be able to like pick the right pass, So the point is that sort of up front, there's this kind of meta decision, right? Am I going to pass? Am I going to stop? Am I going to move with the ball? And most of us in productivity have a meta decision that we don't really sometimes pay attention to, which is what is the best use of my time and attention right now? Sometimes it's actually, and I've really had to learn this, and I still think this is important practice for me, sometimes it's just to go and rest, right? Or it's to go and restore, or it's to take yourself out of your office and put yourself in a different environment. But if I'm only like, oh my God, this is my to-do list, and I've just got to kind of like cram through it, there's a way that I'm less present to what's really being called for. Like if I really just open up and like ask the universe, like, hey, what's the best use of me right now? They might be like, go and have some fun. Or actually, you know what? You need to get out of that and really just like get into your books because you don't really know where your finances are. So presence actually helps with decision making. It helps with knowing how to allocate. A lot of people think in terms of time management, right? Then there's those of us that are cooler and we think in terms of energy and attention management, which is true. It's like we have this finite amount of energy and we need to be in contact with what builds our energy up and what diminishes our energy, and maybe making decisions to bring more of the things that build our energy up into our lives. So it will be different for extroverts and introverts. But even the most extroverted people, generally their development is often in a more introverted direction. Mm-hmm. So presence allows us to be the most conscious person in the room, to be observant, to really know where to put our time and energy, really to receive more information from the universe. It's sort of like it's almost a sixth sense in some ways, to actually pick up better information, make better decisions, take better care of ourselves, be more available to our staff. So there's a kind of potency that can come from that. Here's the challenge, is a lot of people get their productivity from some behaviors that are not fully sustainable, in my view, right? Yeah. So the person who is super productive, but basically driven by anxiety. And so
that's so me.
I didn't want to say your name. So I'm joking. So when people get hip to that pattern, often their productivity drops, and that's why they're less interested in presence, because they only know a way of being productive that is based on anxiety, right? They don't know this other way of how to be productive. So once their productivity drops because they're actually metabolizing more of their anxiety, they're like, well, that doesn't work. It's sort of like someone who has never really known what it means to be loved, right? And they what they think is love is actually some form of strange attachment or kind of connection that comes in and comes out. And so when they actually start to receive love, it doesn't feel as addictive as that other thing that they're used to, so they kind of reject it. And I think there's a similar thing that happens with presence. You have to create a space to learn something new, and it might not immediately be like, boom, huge productivity gains. But in the long run, you might now build a life where you get a decision about how many hours you work in a day. You're not just ongoingly all the time. You learn how to switch off. You learn how to manage your attention, and obviously part of the evolution of consciousness, or obviously in my view it is the increasing sensitivity of the human being. So the more present you are, the more sensitive you are, you tend to feel more. And that doesn't necessarily always mean that you're going to be super productive in that way that you knew, but you might just be opening up layers of information and personal and soul development that just weren't available for you when you were basically a sort of anxious hamster on a wheel.
Hamster on the wheel, I like that. So I want to talk about the workshop that we're having in December, but before we do that, can you, and I'm gonna spring this on you, can you give us a tip or a technique or a quick little like usable bit of information? How can we take this and apply it into our lives? Go.
A technique for being more present?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I suggest that people look at what they do first thing in the day, because I think what you do first thing in the day can often set the sort of context for your day. And what we know a little bit from Ayurvedic medicine is that a lot of us, wake up with active minds, right? So I can have really cool dreams, and within a few minutes, suddenly my mind is going, and I can often experience physical anxiety because I'm sort of like, oh, like how many appointments do I have today, and like when am I going to fit that thing? And it's very, it's almost like my body hasn't woken up, but my mind has. So paying attention to what you practice first thing in the day, doing something that connects you with your physicality, right? So that could be exercise, it could be nature, it could be gym, it could be, I said to you, the first thing I did this morning was going and stretch, which I quite like because it's not like high intensity. It sort of attunes me to my body rather than just kind of like working my body. So I would definitely invite people to look at that. And the body and breath. I mean, nearly every spiritual tradition will have some orientation to that, or any kind of yogic Tai Chi meditation sort of practice. And the reason is because the body tends to be in the present. It can definitely store things from the past, right? We all know that, but it tends to orient you to the present. So if you're like, hey, what's going on here, and can I be in touch with my breath? For most of us, that will invite us to be more present, and it stops to be this sort of weird spiritual thing. After a while, it's just like, oh, let me breathe. Even just focusing on a long out breath. There's a way that, even just that moment there, I can tell there's a kind of presence that it tends to invite. So what do you do first thing in the day, and how much do you notice your body and your breath?
Yeah, I mean, how many of us get up and set the tone to our day by checking our phones?
Totally.
Or going right onto Facebook.
Totally.
Like the news.
Oh, it's 6:50 a.m. Better go on Facebook. Yeah.
The world missed me,
No, I get it. I think that's actually a challenge for this sort of technology culture that we live in, But
Absolutely.
Rather than being an anti-technologist, I would just invite people to be more present. Notice what happens. If there's one place that I notice I lose presence probably more than any other, it's surfing the internet. You go on Facebook to do something very legitimate, right? To email, send a message to someone. 10 minutes later, you're like, why did I come on here again? I consistently find that, so I just have to own it. Facebook and presence that's some master practice right there.
Absolutely. So, you're coming back to Wisconsin.
I am.
You are, and I'm really excited. We have a pretty good group so far.
Yeah, totally.
I'd love to get some more people to join us for the workshop that we're doing. It's a Friday evening or all day Saturday. So you could do one or the other or both together. December 9th and 10th. And we are calling this workshop Productive and Present. How to be productive and get stuff done. It's not the real title, but you get the gist of it.
I think it's like how to de-stress your life and still get lots of stuff done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. I was just making sure you knew. You do. You passed. Good job. So this workshop is specifically geared towards high-functioning, busy business owners, practitioners.
Yes.
Anybody that's looking to be able to connect with that presence in their life to be more effective and more productive and less hectic. in
Yes,
that.
that's a good word.
Is that appropriate? Yeah. Do you have anything you'd like to say about that workshop?
Come. Yeah, I'll say to it is, I believe that it's super good value, right? So I've definitely done things in this area that have a much kind of higher price point attached to them. And, my orientation is when people work with me is that they have at least some realization about themselves that they didn't have before they come in the room. And that sort of information, in my experience, is kind of profound information. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, a mind expanded to a new dimension can't go back to its original. And it's sort of that thing of like when you really get to see like, oh, there's this thing that I've just taken as being me that is actually a particular pattern. And the more I get present to it, the more I might have a choice to do something different, right? So there's a thing that I do that I preoccupy my attention with. And that's the stuff I'm always orienting people like, I'm going to go after the highest leverage stuff. So it's deeper work, but it's like the deeper the work, in some ways, the more the result. You can teach people time management techniques, but generally they're still hamsters just with better techniques. I don't like people being hamsters. So I'm here to restore your humanity, to put you back in the kind of the center of your life where what you put your time and attention on matters, that the way that you show up matters, that you're in touch with your heart, which a lot of people in their businesses struggle to do because they're so overwhelmed in their heads, that you can become, what I call the new human, a full body human, body, heart, head, present, decisive, productive. I know some stuff about that. I've coached a lot of people in that. So if that's the kind of thing that you're interested in, to be in the world in a way that you're not just governed by your thoughts and emotions, that you have a deeper presence, that you're more of an invitation to what you really care about in your heart, this is the work you have to do, in my experience. So I'd love to be there with you.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else you'd like to add? I think that we covered some pretty great ground today.
I'll just say this. So I often engage people in a sort of exploratory conversation, to see whether coaching might make sense. And I have one set of experiences where you can have a really good conversation with someone, and then maybe at the end they'll say something like, this would be really good for my husband. And It's interesting for me, and this is one of the things that happens with people in the healing professions, where it's like, so we've just uncovered all this stuff that's actually really about you and your life, and that would be useful to your being more present. And where your attention goes is on someone else, right? Which is a big issue in the healing professions because there's so much other, and self gets devalued. So if there's anyone like that out there who knows that they tend to put other people first, right, that they don't take the care of themselves that they take of other people, I would particularly extend an invitation to you, because I know something about that pattern. I've had a lot of that pattern in my life, and I've worked it, and it's not how I show up anymore, and I help coach people into that territory. And we might think that, someday I'll figure that stuff out, right? I'll stop putting other people first. But, if you're in your 30s, 40s, and 50s and that hasn't happened for you, then why not get some help on that? Because it's not easy work, but it's super rewarding work. And then there's a way that you can be there for other people, which isn't about obligation that I have to. It's actually about love. And that is a more potent way to heal. So.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's good. All about love. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jack. I think that's some really powerful stuff that you shared with us today. And hopefully people are going to jump on board for this workshop. We want to have as many people to join us as possible so that we can make it the most
a great
spectacular event possible. So I'm Laura Cox with Acupuncture and Wellness of Wisconsin. We have been chatting with Jack Butler from Colorado, Boulder, beautiful Colorado. I'm so jealous. I want to be there. And if you would like to learn more about this workshop, there's some information on my Facebook page. You can go onto my website as well, which is www.acuwellwisconsin.com. That's ACUWELLWI.com. You can also visit Jack's website to learn more about him, which is beingjackbutler.com.
Yes.
And
or you can go to the event page, which is wisconsinretreat.eventbrite.com. If you just want to go straight now and book.
Directly to there. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
wisconsinretreat.eventbrite.com.
Yes, thank you. And until next time, I invite you to live well, choose well, and be well with Acupuncture and Wellness of Wisconsin. Thanks.
All right. Good being with you, Laura.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Good to see you. Bye.
Bye.